They sneered at the black man in the courtroom, mocking him as a criminal, oblivious that he was the FBI director, and their taunts were about to unravel their own corruption in a stunning reversal. His name was Dr. Michael Ellison, a 49-year-old black man who had been appointed director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation in 2023, the first black man to hold the position. With a doctorate in criminology and a 25-year career in law enforcement, Michael had risen through the FBI's ranks, earning a reputation for his strategic mind and unyielding commitment to justice. In the fall of 2024, he found himself in a courtroom in Memphis, Tennessee, not as a witness or an observer, but as the defendant in a case that would expose deep-seated corruption and racism within the city's police department. The trouble began 6 months earlier, on a rainy March evening. Michael was driving through Memphis, returning from a community outreach event where he had spoken about federal initiatives to combat police misconduct. He was off-duty, dressed in a simple button-down shirt and slacks, his FBI credentials in his wallet. His car, a nondescript sedan, didn't advertise his status, which was exactly how he liked it. Michael believed in leading quietly, letting his work speak for itself. But that night, two Memphis police officers, Officers David Warren and Kyle Bennett, pulled him over on a quiet street in a predominantly black neighborhood. The stop was routine at first. Michael noticed the flashing lights and pulled over, his hands on the steering wheel, his demeanor calm and professional. He had been through enough traffic stops to know the drill. Keep your hands visible, stay polite, don't escalate. Warren approached the driver's side, his flashlight trained on Michael's face, while Bennett stood by the passenger side, his hand resting on his holster. License and registration, Warren demanded, his tone sharp. Michael complied, slowly retrieving his documents, including his FBI credentials, which he handed over alongside his driver's license. "I'm Michael Ellison," he said, his voice steady. "I'm with the FBI." Warren glanced at the credentials, but didn't seem to register their significance. "Step out of the vehicle," he said, his voice colder now. Michael's brow furrowed, but he complied, stepping onto the wet pavement, his hands raised to show he was no threat. "What's the reason for the stop?" Michael asked, his tone professional but firm. Warren ignored the question, his eyes narrowing as he looked Michael up and down. "You fit the description of a suspect in a robbery," he said, though he offered no details. Bennett chimed in, his voice laced with mockery. "Yeah, you look like you're up to no good. Let's see what's in the car." Michael's jaw tightened, but he kept his composure. He knew this wasn't about a robbery. He had seen this before, officers targeting black men fishing for a reason to escalate. "I'm the director of the FBI," he said, his voice clear. "My credentials are right there. You can verify them." Warren scoffed, tossing the credentials onto the car's hood. "Director, huh? Sure, buddy. And I'm the governor." Bennett laughed, stepping closer, his posture aggressive. They ordered Michael to turn around, and before he could protest, Warren grabbed his arm, forcing him against the car. Michael didn't resist, but he repeated, "I'm not a suspect. Check my ID." The situation spiraled. Bennett claimed he saw a suspicious object in the car, a lie as later evidence would prove, and Warren handcuffed Michael, accusing him of resisting arrest. A search of the car turned up nothing, but the officers weren't deterred. They arrested Michael, charging him with resisting arrest, disorderly conduct, and obstruction of justice, vague charges meant to stick just long enough to cause trouble. As they led him to their patrol car, Warren muttered, "You think you're special? You're just another thug to us." Michael spent the night in a holding cell, his phone call going to his deputy director, Karen Liu, who immediately began working to secure his release. By morning, the charges were dropped, but Michael wasn't done. He knew this wasn't an isolated incident. Warren and Bennett were part of a pattern in the Memphis Police Department, where complaints of racial profiling and excessive force had piled up for years. As FBI director, Michael had overseen investigations into corrupt police departments, and now he had first-hand experience of the problem. He didn't go public with his story, not yet. Instead, he directed his team to launch a discreet investigation into Warren, Bennett, and their unit. The FBI uncovered a trail of misconduct, falsified reports, planted evidence, and a pattern of targeting Black residents in low-income neighborhoods. Michael decided to take it further. He allowed a civil lawsuit to proceed against him, using the trumped-up charges as a way to draw the officers into court, where their actions could be exposed under oath. The trial began in October 2024 in a packed Memphis courtroom. Warren and Bennett sat in the gallery, their uniforms pressed, their expressions smug. They believed the case was a formality. Michael, they thought, was just a man with a story, one the jury wouldn't buy. Their attorney, Paul Grayson, argued that Michael had been uncooperative, that the officers had acted in good faith, and that the charges, though dropped, were justified. The prosecution, led by a young attorney named Rachel Patel, presented Michael's side, a respected federal official wrongfully arrested, targeted because of his race. During the trial, Warren and Bennett's confidence was palpable. They whispered to each other, chuckling as Grayson cross-examined Michael, trying to paint him as aggressive and uncooperative. In the hallway during breaks, they mocked him openly, calling him the so-called director and joking about how he'd learn his place. Other officers in their unit joined in, their laughter echoing through the courthouse. They didn't know who Michael was, not really. To them, he was just another Black man they could intimidate. Michael sat at the plaintiff's table, his face composed, his answers measured. He didn't mention his title unless asked directly, letting the officers' assumptions play out. Patel presented evidence, dashcam footage showing the officers' aggressive tactics, audio of their mocking comments, and Michael's pristine record as a law enforcement officer. The jury listened intently, but Warren and Bennett remained unfazed, certain their badge would shield them. The turning point came on the third day of the trial. Grayson, in a moment of overconfidence, asked Michael to clarify his alleged role with the FBI, implying he was exaggerating his position. Michael leaned forward, his voice calm but commanding. "I am Dr. Michael Ellison," he said, Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, appointed by the President of the United States in 2023. I oversee a workforce of 35,000 and a budget of over $10 billion. And on March 17, 2024, your clients arrested me without cause, based solely on the color of my skin. The courtroom went silent. Warren and Bennett froze, their faces draining of color. Grayson stammered, caught off guard, his notes forgotten. The judge, a veteran jurist named Clara Thompson, raised an eyebrow, her gaze shifting to the officers. The gallery buzzed, reporters scribbling furiously, as the weight of Michael's words settled over the room. The officers' mocking laughter was gone, replaced by stunned realization. They hadn't just arrested a Black man, they had targeted the head of the FBI. Patel seized the moment, introducing Michael's credentials, his service record, and a letter from the Attorney General confirming his role. She played the dashcam audio again, letting the officer's own words, calling Michael a thug and dismissing his credentials. Damn them. The jury's mood shifted, their faces reflecting a mix of shock and disgust. Warren and Bennett sank lower in their seats, their earlier confidence replaced by dread. The trial ended with a unanimous verdict in Michael's favor. The jury awarded him damages for wrongful arrest and emotional distress, but more importantly, the case exposed the officer's misconduct to the public. The judge, in her closing remarks, condemned Warren and Bennett's actions as a betrayal of public trust, recommending a review of their conduct by the police department and federal authorities. As the gavel fell, Michael stood, his expression unchanged. He didn't gloat or seek applause. He thanked Patel, shook hands with the jury foreman, and left the courtroom, his focus already on the next steps. The FBI's investigation into the Memphis Police Department intensified, leading to the suspension of Warren, Bennett, and 3 other officers involved in similar misconduct. Federal prosecutors filed charges against the pair for civil rights violations, with trials pending. The story exploded in the media. News outlets ran headlines about the FBI director's arrest, with pundits dissecting the systemic racism that allowed it to happen. Social media amplified the story, with clips of Michael's courtroom testimony going viral under hashtags like #JusticeForEllison and #EndPoliceCorruption. Community activists in Memphis organized rallies, demanding reforms and accountability. Michael met with them privately, listening to their stories and pledging federal support for change. Warren and Bennett faced consequences beyond the courtroom. Their department placed them on administrative leave, and their names became synonymous with corruption. The police union, which had initially defended them, distanced itself as public pressure mounted. Michael, meanwhile, continued his work, overseeing national investigations while pushing for reforms within the FBI and beyond. He spoke at a law enforcement conference a month later, his message clear: a badge is not a shield for prejudice. It's a responsibility to serve everyone equally. The Memphis case became a turning point, sparking reviews of police practices across the country. Michael's experience as a Black man and the FBI director highlighted the stark reality of racial profiling, even for those in the highest positions. He didn't see himself as a symbol, but others did. Young Black officers reached out, inspired by his resilience. Community leaders cited his case in their push for change. And in Memphis, residents began to demand a police force that reflected their values, not their fears. Michael carried on, his focus unwavering. He knew the fight against corruption and bias was far from over, but he also knew he had the power to make a difference. One case, one truth, one stand at a time.